Welcome to another year of Grady TV. We're kicking it off New Year's Day with my special guest, Buck Precision. We're going to be highlighting what we think is going to happen this year in the world of politics, our predictions, if you will. Buck, have you thought about this? Do you have any predictions?
Yeah, when it comes to 2024, I feel like it's going to be a pivotal year, and then 2025 even more so. It's going to be like, well, we're living in historic times, but I think we're really going to start seeing tangible reset type scenarios and major reshufflings of things this year. I don't know if I should start. Okay, I don't want to start with the US elections. I'll start with what's happening in the Middle East. I think in 2024, the two-state solution will be green lighted. The state of Israel will be forced to agree, and Palestine will basically have its capital in East Jerusalem. They'll basically split Jerusalem up. That's my first prediction. I also think China will escalate the Taiwan stuff, but without any military escalation. They'll just basically start infiltrating Taiwanese politics. You're going to hear about a pro unification party or some shenanigans like that. You might even start seeing assassinations come back. Major figureheads in Asia, I see them being taken out.
What countries in particular?
Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. I see this being a greater pattern of U.S. withdrawal from the Eurasian landmass. I see the Chinese managing to have signed slavish treaties with Japan and South Korea, like basically have them become their minions. And with the Russia-Ukraine thing, I see Russia finalizing or consolidating its victories in Ukraine. Ukraine basically signing some kind of surrender, and then the Russians escalating, and you'll start hearing about them threatening beyond Ukraine, like the countries neighboring Ukraine, Poland in particular. And with that, you will start the process of unraveling NATO.
Well, for myself, I do see some kind of war escalation. I'm going to predict around February.
Mhm.
I do think this will be partly due to the American public's general.
The tensions between like the different ideologies and
Well, yeah, I don't think. I mean, you've seen probably some recent poll numbers for Biden showing him having 45, 50% approval rating. There is no way that's true. I mean,
oh yeah, that's all cooked up. I honestly think the Democrats, they're gonna wait until like the national convention in August or September, whenever they have it, and then they're gonna get rid of Biden because he's old and feeble. They're gonna probably put in like a Gavin Newsom or some or might even bring back Michelle Obama or something. But Trump
why
would,
not? Why not Kamala Harris?
or even yeah, like the one thing I worry with Kamala is she's basically like people don't really respect her resume. So I don't see the Democrats kind like I it's easier for them to have like a Gavin Newsom Kamala ticket in my opinion. And then with Trump, I see him definitely having some. He will have one of either Vivek, that Indian guy, or that Indian lady, Nikki Haley, as his vice president. That's my prediction. For some reason, they're pushing Indian politicians because even Kamala is part Indian. So I see that with Trump, and I see Trump winning the election, but because of legal barriers, they're going to pull up some, court shenanigans, and that might lead into tensions as the 2025 New Year comes up. So the end of 2024 might be quite momentous. Might be the most like tense election period in American history, in my opinion.
Well, one of my predictions is that I don't think Trump will be allowed to run. I think by the time the election comes around, I'm not really sure how they're going to do it.
I agree,
It
man.
might just be that the Supreme Court rules that the states can remove him from the ballots if they see fit. They may not even want to rule on that, you know,
I have a question for
because
you. Do you think like assassinations and serious things like that will come to the U.S. just because the Democrats and the Republicans? It's now been 10 years, maybe more, that they hate each other so much they can't see eye to eye.
yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's really like that. I mean, most of the Democrats I know have told me that they're going to vote for Trump if it's Biden. You know what I mean? Because they really see that Biden has done nothing. I don't think they see that. I think they blame Biden. They don't blame the party. To me, it's weekend at Biden's, right? We
Yeah,
got a We got a corpse there, but there are people. They're making moves that the Democrat Party wants to be made,
yeah,
and I think they're blaming it. The average Democrat is saying, "Oh, it's Sleepy Joe who's old and feeble. He's not able to make the right choices."
yeah,
And they're blaming it on him, and they probably would vote for a Gavin Newsom or somebody like that. I mean, to me, Gavin Newsom is a poor choice nationwide, especially with the swing voters, because here in America, we see what's happening in California. You know, they got homeless everywhere, immigration rampant. We see a mass exodus out of the state.
yeah,
I don't see him as being a popular choice, but he's an establishment guy. Clearly, he's going to do what the establishment wants him to do. And that's why they put Biden in there, because they knew. Well, I feel like they have so much blackmail material on Biden
yeah,
that they could easily throw him in jail or take him out of office anytime they wanted to.
yeah. He's
So,
compromised like crazy. You're right. Yeah,
yeah, so that's why they wanted Biden in there so bad, in my opinion. Now, you put a Gavin Newsom in there. As far as Kamala Harris, uh, in my opinion, I don't ever even hear about her.
I was just about to say, yeah, they keep. I think it's because she's so like she's not smart enough or charismatic enough to raise polls. So they just basically say, hey, you did your job. You're basic, and the office of the vice president is becoming more and more like just a figurehead type role. Uh, so I'm thinking they're worried about having her on the spotlight. She might not be as charismatic as the others.
Well, I mean, even Pence, who
Oh
I
yeah,
don't think had a huge role in the Trump administration, even though he was the vice president, and I feel he was a guy Trump felt he had to put in because he
yeah,
was a establishment Republican. They wanted him. I feel like he felt if he didn't put one of their guys in as vice president, they were going to work against him during the election.
yeah.
So he needed to put somebody in there that the party would work with him.
Like
So that's how
placating.
you got Pence. But even throughout his presidency, you heard about Pence a lot. He would go around. He would make trips abroad quite a bit to talk to people. And, you know, specifically the Reagan administration, after Reagan got shot, he was not really the same after that. So you really saw Bush more out in the forefront a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And I would say Bush W. You saw Dick Cheney was calling the shots in that administration, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was the brains behind the operations.
Right. So to me, it's just so weird that you never hear about Kamala Harris. I had to think to myself, who was vice president a few weeks ago? I was like, who? I was like, oh my God, I'm turning into one of those man on the street people that can't tell you who the vice president is. But it's really that you don't hear about her, and you would think that with Biden being the way he is, you would think, just like Reagan when he was a bit more feeble after the assassination attempt, you
Yeah.
would have them put her out in the forefront more to at least groom her for an election. You know, so to me it seems like yeah, they don't want Kamala Harris either. I think she's a yes person. I think she would do whatever she's told, but you know, perhaps not. Maybe they don't want her for that reason. I don't know. Maybe she's just unlikable. They don't think she will get the votes.
I honestly think it's just because she doesn't have the the, the medal. Like Mike Pence, remind me, I don't remember, but wasn't he a governor before he got selected for the vice presidency? I know
Yeah, he was
Bush.
governor of Indiana.
There you go. I know Bush Senior was like head of CIA, and Dick Cheney was, I don't remember, but Dick Cheney was always in like government roles. But Kamala, I think the pinnacle of her career was she was like an attorney general or something. Like she wasn't really. She was like attorney general in California, or a district attorney in San Francisco or something. So she wasn't like a governor of the state or like the head of the CIA like these other vice presidents. So
Yes.
I think I think they know she doesn't have the caliber, and she might be stumped in like a press briefing or something. She just looked like a deer in the headlights. That's why they keep her away from. And another reason might be maybe her and Biden just don't see eye to eye. Like that's another possibility. And uh, you do what was his name, Pence, after Trump lost, quote unquote, lost the 2020 elections. Didn't Pence turn on Trump? Like a lot of
Oh
these
yeah, yeah. I
guys
mean,
don't like each other.
well, I think that Pence comes from. He's actually part of that Never Trumper group. You
Oh
know,
right, yeah. They told him to say like be
he's a
anti-Trump.
neocon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, to me, I don't even see Trump as a classic conservative. You know, a lot of stuff he does, I think, should appeal more to the left. You know, but they just doesn't because they're sort of trained through the media to hate him, everything he does. But to me, I mean, a lot of the stuff Trump did was not, you know, a classical conservative. But to me, the neocons, their primary goal, I think, is just to set up a world government. You know.
One thing I'll give Trump credit when it comes to foreign policy, he has some kind of back channel with Russia where they actually listen to him. Because if you look at the Russians, Putin, he only did his invasions before Trump got in office and then after Trump got in office. When Obama was president, he invaded Crimea back in 2014, and then he waited until Biden was president for him to invade Ukraine back in 2022. But while Trump was president, that 4 year period, Russia did not do anything.
Well, that plays into the conspiracy that you know Trump has somehow been promoted by Russia to be able to win the election
Yeah,
through, I think they were saying social media posts or
yeah, the Russian
something.
bots or the Russian, yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
But I think what it is that Trump understands their position, you know. This is what I try to tell people. What they're doing in the Ukraine basically checkmates Russia. And they are chess masters. And they're masters of war as well, you know. I mean, they're not They're not somebody to fuck with, in my opinion. A lot of people think they're weak or whatever, but um, you know,
I
this would
agree.
be like this would be like having China put nuke bombs, in Mexico, like right on the border or something,
Yeah.
and telling us not to worry about it. They're having military bases there that are, and I'll tell you something else. What it does is, especially if you block them from Crimea, because that's really what they want.
Mhm.
They have no access to seaports,
Yep.
and NATO can put sanctions on them anytime they want to bring them to their knees, and they cannot allow that. If they're going to be a player on the global stage, they cannot have this mafioso of governments coalition telling them, what they can and cannot do with the threat of not being able to access their seaports to bring in goods,
Yeah.
you know. And that's one of the reasons why I don't know if you've seen Russia's actually they're up. They've actually I don't know if you remember, but they actually claimed the North Pole.
Oh yeah, and um, maybe right after the pandemic was like right when the lockdowns were ending, they were there were reports of them flying over Canadian airspace up in the Arctic. Like they were taunting Canada's but this was like back in 2021. This was before any Ukraine stuff.
Yeah, they've got a military base up there, and they're they seem to be actually making canals through the ice.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, yeah. Basically, alternatives to the Suez old school sea routes and like using the Arctic as a shipping as
Well,
an
yeah,
alternative.
and I think it would actually probably be a much better route than actually exists now.
You know what I think with the whole Red Sea stuff, and this is literally what I think of all the time. I think like Russia's already like whatever was chaining it up in the 90s and the 2000s and keeping it stuck in the Black Sea region. I think whatever was keeping it at bay, it's no longer doing that. And the secret um, um, piece to this is Turkey. Turkey, Erdogan's Turkey, which is the only reason they put Turkey in NATO back in the late 40s, was so that the Turkish military would keep the Russian, well, the Soviet Union back then, at bay, never passing the Dardanelles, which is Istanbul, into the Mediterranean. But
Mm.
what happened was in 2016, there was a coup attempt on the president of Turkey, Erdogan, and however he managed to uh, to curb it, he did it, right? And this coup was managed from Langley, Virginia, from the CIA and all that. And ever since Erdogan, outsmarted this coup attempt, he's been purging all these anti anti-Erdogan elements in the military. These were NATO's minions. These they're called Kemalists, and Erdogan is more like an Islamist, and he's building Islamist deep state in Turkey. So basically, long story short, Erdogan must have 100% been talking with Putin, with the Russians, behind closed doors. And we are seeing, and it's why Turkey was, basically quiet about what Russia was doing in Syria for the last 10 years, bombing, you know, places right by the
Hmm.
Turkish border. So they were agreeing to all this without the Americans knowing. Russia has now escaped its chains in the Black Sea. It's definitely in the Mediterranean. It's definitely in the Red Sea. It has agents all over Africa. You see different military regimes in Africa falling. The only way they have a supply chain, logistical chain, is they're being allowed to go through the Mediterranean via Turkey. And the Americans know that. Trump knew that. So I think what Trump was doing, or the camp behind the Trump presidency, or whatever you want to call it, the anti neocons, they were like, look, we see where the wind is blowing. We are losing the Eurasian sphere. What we can do is retreat in a proper way, and then build up our domestic stuff. But then there's the globalist camp who are using the Biden presidency, and they're pushing basically the status quo to its brink. I remember when that whole Russia flying over Canada thing happened, is when Biden told Trudeau, "Oh, you gotta you gotta up your contributions to NATO." And up until then, Canada was relying on American security and you know uh, the U.S. military industrial complex taking care of its macro security. But now it looks like every NATO country, and Canada is not even a big player. It's more Europe. They have to they have to start taking care of their own security because the Americans are leaving the the landmass. And just my final point, this is something I've been thinking about. The only reason the Russians are taking it slow in Ukraine, and they're not doing a blitzkrieg and like bombing it to the Stone Age and threatening Europe, is because they're giving the Europeans time to basically build up their own military and then say to the US, hey, we don't need NATO anymore. We are our own EU bloc. And this will be something kind of aided by the Russians in the back rooms. So I think this is what's going to happen. It might happen in 2024. You'll hear about NATO dismantling, and then the French have to take care of their own security. The Germans and these guys, they have no military. Let's be like they have superior tech. Their tanks, everything is better than Russia's, but it's like an iPhone 15, but with 3% battery because these guys don't have fuel. Europe is completely dependent on, you know, the world order for fuel and everything, while Russia is kind of more self-sufficient, more primitive and self-sufficient.
Well, yeah, but to answer your question, I think that's why Putin and Trump get along. Is I really don't think Trump is pro NATO,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think Putin knows that. So, and I'll say it wasn't just Putin that Trump was able to make some headway with. I mean, it was outside of I think there was a one bombing of Syria during his entire 4 years.
Mhm.
It was a very peaceful 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we made a lot of people made fun of it, but probably the best progress we've had with North Korea.
Yeah.
They weren't launching, bombs towards Japan every fucking day no more, and there was other, all of that went away the second Biden came into office. It was like the last 4 years didn't even happen. It just took right back up. I mean, I feel like everything that's been happening the last 4 years would have happened the 4 years under Hillary had she won. You know?
100%. Yeah. I think what they wanted World War III right around then, 2016 or so. They were planning to take out Erdogan and consolidate um, Turkey and everything, and then sick the Turks on the Russians. Uh, what they were going to do is, remember back, this is like 2016, Syria had all these chemical attacks. Bashar al-Assad was supposedly gassing his own people or something, and then they were
Oh yeah.
claiming that the Russians were helping him. I think what they were going to do is they were allowing Russia to bomb Syria, and then Hillary would have put Putin in the International Criminal Court, and this was what would have triggered World War III. And there would have been no Ukraine, no, it would have been the Middle East, and basically they would have taken Russia's minions soft underbelly, Iran. That was their plan, and then from Iran up north through the Caucasus, going into Russia proper, and then their plan for Russia was to break it up into mini countries like Yugoslavia, how Yugoslavia was broken up. But for some reason, maybe within the U.S., there's this is just a theory of mine. There's like a competing deep states, and I think they might have given advice to Putin. He might have even gotten advice from the Trump camp.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And getting back to you talking about a lot of the European nations don't have their own military,
100%, and Japan and Korea.
right? I feel almost like we don't need large numbers in the military anymore. I feel like all wars going forward are going to be purely technological. You're going to see a lot of drones. You're going to see a lot of,
People in
I
bunkers
mean,
operating remote controlled uh, vehicles.
yeah, you're going to see long range bombs going off. You're going to see a lot of drones.
Drones, yeah.
People are going to be, and that's been going on in the Middle East ever since the 90s, I think, where
Yep.
they were actually recruiting video game players in the military who would just basically sit in a room in America and shoot people with drones over in the Middle East like they were playing a fucking video game.
Yeah, I used to hear about how a lot of these drones were being controlled from Vegas, and it was like wild. I remember hearing about that, like
Yeah,
2015,
I mean, you can like defend yourself, and then also, yeah, you're going to have boots on the ground. But with the technology the way it is, I don't think you have to have massive amounts of troops anymore.
You know what? There is still, like, if you look at what's happening in Gaza, the Israelis were boasting prior to the Hamas attacks that AI has everything under control. They basically felt like all the communications, all the texts that was, communicated in Gaza, they could access, they could hack into. They were monitoring everyone, but uh, it still failed. It's almost like the Palestinians are basically the ambassadors of humanity against the dawn of AI, or the dawn of this new reality.
I have nothing to prove this, but I do know technology is way more advanced than what we know about. They had cell phones back in World War II and shit.
Holy smokes! Yeah, yeah.
And you have to wonder just what we know about AI. I feel like they've got like a super brain AI, and I think United States has one. I think China has one, and I think Russia has one, and probably some other countries have developed them. And it's probably
Controlling everything.
decades old. And I feel like nothing makes sense anymore. And I feel like there's been a war going on, an AI war,
I wouldn't surprise
where
me.
where they're making moves. An AI is basically telling them, projecting out modules like, oh, if you do this, then this is going to happen, and it's making connections like the average human mind can't even make.
Yeah,
So that's why when you see how like a lot of these countries react and the moves they're making, you think, wow, this is really fucking dumb. I think they are playing like AI chess.